Let's see. Robert, do you have meeting access, like not maintainer, moderator access? I don't even know how
No,
to get that.
I do not.
All good. I was going to kick that note taker app, but I don't know how. That's okay. Maybe I can make it leave. All right, let's go ahead and jump into it. I'm your host today. So we've got some meeting topics to run through. We've got some housekeeping. Again, I'll keep posting since people don't see it unless they join. I wish Zoom would add that as a feature. Keep posting the meeting agenda and notes in the meeting chat. If you haven't done so already, please add yourself to the attendee list. You can show what company you're with. You don't have to. That's all good there. Just please specify if you are new. While people are still joining, if you are new and you would like, feel free and introduce yourselves to the group so we get a little bit more context to who you are and why you're interested in kind of participating with the group. Somebody jump in and go first, or I'll volunteer someone.
So I can start. Christophe Geoffrey, nice to meet you. I'm part of Nutanix. I'm principal architect on the cloud native offer in Nutanix. And of course, platform deployment and apps deployment are two subjects we are pretty interesting for us. So that's why I'm here and I try to understand what the working group is working on and maybe to contribute in the future.
Hey, Bruno, I work for VTEX, as an e-commerce platform. We're pretty big in Latin America, and I used to work for Facebook before that. And I'm a principal software engineer today in the company. And what we're doing, I'm trying to just basically make our whole PaaS solution more mature. So I think where I can contribute here is bringing some real world scenarios of like us trying to increase our maturity and what is happening, and get some feedback from you and vice versa. So that's where I think I can help the most right now.
Very cool. Thank you.
I can go next. I'm Giulio Ruggero. I am the co-founder of my platform and the CTO. My main focus is platform engineering, platform building, and everything that is related to developer experience and platform in the whole picture. Then I open an issue on GitHub about platform engineering plus, and I would like to discuss with you. Yeah.
Very cool. And I think I have that on here as well as a discussion point today.
Yeah.
I'll jump in next. My name is Brian Ross. I joined a couple of meetings last year, but time got the better of me. I've since moved role across to GitLab, where I'm now a field CTO, and have more time, hopefully, to dedicate this group. So looking forward to contributing with articles or blog posts, etc., whatever I can do to help.
Thank you. I think that covers it. Let's see. Let's jump into it. So the agenda and notes for today, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping. We have something that we'd like to get a little bit of voting or some opinions on. We'll talk about that. Robert's going to talk about promise theory as well. Then we're going to jump into some of the ongoing work. I wanted to do a check-in with the Platform as Product team and some of the folks there, see if there's anything we can do to help. And I personally and the other leads, we want to schedule some time, some formal time to talk about supporting you guys and helping to move that forward, but we can keep that separate. And then we have a number of discussion items. Today, we were going to do a deeper dive into the Tyke API maturity model, but they have needed to postpone that discussion topic for another time. So we have some topics that are there in the GitHub issues that we can discuss. Several of the community contribution topics like the platforms of platforms and product thinking in regards to platforms is an open one as well, and some blogs related to that, as well as the most popular recent one, which is the platform schema representation alternatives. Does anyone have anything they would like to add to the agenda? Cool. So let's jump into it. Housekeeping. One of the areas that we discussed some in person in KubeCon, and it's come up in several of the calls, we recently had another time change for daylight savings time, which kind of threw off some people's schedules. The group currently follows UTC, so we're agnostic to daylight savings time. But we wanted to get an ask from the group and see, should we change to follow daylight savings time or not? Is it a problem that it's moved? Is it helpful? But does anybody have any thoughts they want to express on that? Hey, Marsh.
Hi, I do. I started a linked a Slack thread where we were talking about this in the Slack channel too. If anyone wants to jump in there, I'm curious. Like, show of hands, who has other meetings on their calendar that aren't UTC based? Sorry, that are UTC based. Like, this is the only UTC call that I have, and I'm curious if that's just me, if I'm weird. But what happens is that relative to the other calendar events that get scheduled around it, so I can keep it open for joining this call, like for half the year, it shifts into conflict with those, and then I have to make a choice: which open source project am I going to support today? And I hate that tension. So I'd rather align with, even if it means, since everybody doesn't move time zones at the same time, it's better than being out of sync for 6 months of the year. That's the way I see it.
Bruno?
I would say I have meetings that are not exactly UTC based, but they don't move daylight savings. So it's kind of the similar effect. I have a lot of meetings in Brazil which abolished daylight savings. So maybe I'm one of the few cases here where actually keeping UTC is fine. But I totally empathize with what you're saying. I think it makes more sense to be on something that causes less pain than guaranteed pain for all, right?
Yeah. And just to clarify, because it went back and forth in the Slack thread, and like I keep on saying, time zones are weird. They're hard. Most of the time, they don't make sense. And if there weren't daylight savings, which I think everyone should get rid of, it makes no sense anymore in a digital world, UTC would be fine. But I see the point, because personally, these meetings have a tendency of happening after work for me. There's basically no chance of like overlapping. The meetings that I do in various projects are pretty far away from each other, like schedule wise. So if it moves an hour, it doesn't really matter to me. But I also see that if you kind of slot it in this in a hectic schedule, and it starts moving, and like I said, it takes 6 months before it gets back to the same place, I can see how that is an issue. So I think what Colin, what we plus Abby kind of discussed were either let it stay as it is, which, like, in theory I like, because again, it's a standard that doesn't adhere to anything, and then you kind of just have to deal with it, I guess, like, because everyone lives in different parts of the world. Or we basically pin it to a specific time zone. And I don't want to call it GMT, because GMT is also kind of misleading, because that is the previous standard, and parts of the world have that for a while and then they don't, and so on and so forth. So just being very specific to a time zone, because if you pin it to a time zone that has daylight savings, at least, well, most people will have a better time, but unless you're in Brazil, apparently. So it is the same.
If you pin it to London, it's painful for about 2 weeks for everyone.
Yes.
Or someone. And
except
then,
if you don't have daylight savings. But for now, at least, there's not a whole lot of places that I know of that I work against, at least, that
Marsh, we could move to Indiana somewhere, don't they? The county that doesn't do daylight savings.
Yeah, you might be right. Yeah, there are a couple states doing it now, but what a mess.
I think we can't all just move to the same place, everyone, and we don't have to deal with this. It's the cheaper option. No,
I vote Switzerland for the chocolate.
All right.
So proposal then, if we need to pick a time zone, and obviously again, theologies of time zones to one side. If the meetings are currently based on UTC, do we just follow daylight savings time based in the UK, given that's the closest?
And that's
based in the UK, so I'm somewhat biased, but in terms of trying to get to a concrete proposal, is that what we're suggesting?
So to be very specific, if we pin it to London time or whatever you want to call it, you know, UK specific. Again, that means if you have this in your calendar and doesn't come from anywhere, you need to add it and make sure you put in the right time zone, or else stuff is going to happen and then you're left out because your calendar, you know, changes. So that's how I at least do it with these meetings. I pin them to the specific time zone when I'm adding the calendar invite, and it will change based on whatever makes actually sense. So just saying, don't put it in your local time and expect it to stay. Because again, time zones hard, yeah,
So
unnecessarily.
if it's put
hard.
in the what I've mentioned in the Slack is if you use the CNCF calendar and copy from it, you can put different items in the calendar in different time zones. So when someone copies it, they'll get it. Like I have a calendar with 2 separate events. I keep one in the US, one in the UK. And so for those different parties, it remains consistent.
Yes, so that is also, and I'm not sure what the CNCF calendar is looking like for us right now. I haven't checked that in ages. I just put in my own thing. But if it's pinned to UTC, then we would need to pin it to something else, so it stays consistent.
I think Leon, when you know, she said when she put things in, it had a time zone element and it didn't go right. So
again, time zones.
yeah.
Yeah. So while I originally were kind of like against the idea, I do see how it would make it better if it was pinned to a specific time zone, even though UTC makes sense to me in my head. As long as I put it in the calendar with the right time zone, I don't really care because it'll keep itself up to date.
So I like Anton's suggestion of using Central European time and Central European summertime. At least that way it's not overly British, frankly. So yeah, in terms of a concrete proposal, again, time zones a theology to one side. That would seem pretty sensible.
Well, the easiest one would be to go UK time, just because UTC is the winter time, and then it's +1 during summer. So, you know, it'll change during summer. But frankly, I don't think it really matters when we do it, as long as we do it and, you know, and we're very explicitly like, call it, this is the time zone. So everyone is aware of that. And yeah.
So
How
I
do we
added
resol- how do
Can I
we
say-
how
to
do we
move off
close this out?
topic.
We're 15 minutes in
Yeah.
and
Yes.
still
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
time zones. So is there some official mechanism for us to say yay or nay on something like this?
In the chat, I was trying to get there in the chat. I put an emoji vote here for UTC, emoji vote here for changing. Just find that in the chat, and then we'll take that behind the scenes. So I appreciate it. All right, we got to move on. Sorry for taking up time with that.
No, it's really important. I'm glad we did it. Thank you.
Yeah, it actually is super helpful to me as well if we change it back, because I have a bunch of standing meetings that this overlapped with. And it caused me to miss the last 3 meetings, I think. For the
Can
next
I?
topic, yeah.
Sorry, just last piece there is that what I think we're going to do then is move this current in the time zone that we're at, sorry, in the where we are now, we're going to move it back an hour so that it will fall back into line where it was a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Robert, you're up.
Yeah. So promise theory is not a long spiel on this, but basically William Risso in the Slack started talking about a presentation he did, and he mentioned promise theory, which apparently a lot of people weren't aware of. And he got a lot of questions about it, and that kind of spun off to a thing where we would like to get the author of or one of the authors, but the main author of promise theory, Mark Burgess, to maybe come on here and talk a little bit about that. It's not necessarily directly technical or related to platforms, but it kind of is. So it's a I won't go into details on the theory, because then we will be sitting here talking about it for a while. Basically, there's a lot of basis there for a lot of the things that we do and how we kind of operate. So, you know, go back to something like control theory for how we do feedback loops and so on and so forth. So I'm gonna have Mark Burgess is now Norwegian, but he's based out of Oslo. So I'm actually gonna meet him for lunch this week, and just basically get him maybe to come on one of these to talk about promise theory. And I think there's several of us that have some sort of like ideas of stuff we could do with promise theory that would be useful for platform engineering as a whole. And we'll see what comes out of that. So it's basically just a teaser. I'm just updating based on the Slack. So that's about it. I don't need to use any more time on it. If people want to read up on promise theory, I promise it's good. It's a bad joke or good, depending.
Can you post a couple of links, maybe, Robert, in the agenda?
I'll find the stuff.
All right, perfect. I wanted to check really quick. Platform as a product team and folks there, is there anything we can do to help you guys? Do you have an update? Do you need to provide an update? What can we do to help you guys?
Muted. I can provide a quick update. Starting with, can everybody see my screen? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Just real quick for those that are looking at this for the first time, the whole initiative is around understanding the state of product thinking and platform engineering. We're looking to interview platform builders, consumers, and leaders within the same organizations to get kind of a holistic picture from what platform builders are saying around current practices and approaches to what the experience is like on the consuming side, and then on the business side, right, in terms of leaders, around the significance of the platform in the organization, its objectives, how it's perceived above the team, and how it's directed. And the approach to it is running user interviews with these folks. So right now we have a form that's ready to start recruiting those folks who want to lead interviews, whether you have your own network to draw on, whether you want to support interviews and you haven't done them before, whether you want to rely on the CNCF kind of end user group. And we're at a point now where we have best practices guide, the script for the kind of primary platform engineering script, the GDPR kind of content that you can use in your emails with interviewees, and during the interview itself to make sure that we're in compliance and everybody understands consent around data and what we're going to do with it. And that kind of gets us to a place where, we're putting up those final PRs today. So this week, effectively, anybody who's interested can sign up. And if they have their own personal network that they want to start interviewing in, they can just hit the ground running, coordinating their own interviews. And there's a longer kind of tail of things we want to do to kind of spread the word about this initiative in the blog form through CNCF to start getting more participants. Eventually, we need kind of consumer and leader scripts, which we don't currently have. And then eventually a submission form where you can link the transcripts and the videos from the interviews themselves. So we can use that for the synthesis part of the research to draw out themes and patterns and insights about the current state of product thinking. Any kind of immediate questions around how you can participate or the nature of the research? Yes.
I mute. Thank you. If you can you go back to the slide number 1, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. Just to understand the target person. I know that the first time that I joined this conversation, but you have identified the builders, the consumers, and the leaders. And what about the people that are providing the content? For example, operation IT departments that are not the builders of the platform, but who are in charge to provide the infrastructure products, the part of DevOps tool chains, something that are people that will be impacted in their daily job, because you are building on the top a platform to provide a self-service usage of their tools. And what do you think about this kind of people that maybe in some cases they will become people that are building the platform. In other cases, they remain infrastructure guys or DevOps guys, and on top there will be a platform that simplify the user developer experience, but are not in charge to build the platform itself.
Yeah,
It's like yeah.
Yeah, can you give me an example of like the kinds of folks you're talking about in terms of maybe?
An example of a large company where is the department in charge for the creating and managing infrastructure, and there is another department in charge to create an internal developer platform on top of the infrastructure part, and maybe are not keeping the relation between them. Maybe they have several different focus, also maybe are different business units, and they provide just infrastructure, but don't provide the platform on top of the infrastructure.
But
And
they have users of their infrastructure platform, which are another intermediate level above. What might be the best way to approach this is if you have some specific interviewees in mind to go ahead and do the interview process with them and see how it comes out, right? Just do an experiment. Find out how this team thinks about, because the whole idea is to find out how people think about the things that they're building, how they make those decisions. Do they think of their users as customers? And the users of the infrastructure layer, those customers are another level of platform above. And, that's something we want to address within the working group, the fact that, platforms will be multi-level ecosystem type things.
I think it brings up a good point of clarification around what we mean when we say platform engineering or the kind of work we're talking about. That should probably be pretty explicit here.
Yeah, because when I think about a platform, I think about Uber, and you have drivers from one side, you have people that want to go from point A to point B, and you have a platform in the middle that help you to connect producer and consumers, we can say, connect drivers and users. And it's the same part. When you introduce a platform in a company, you have already infrastructure guys, you have already application guys. And you want to put all together to work better. And I understood consumers can be also infrastructure guys, but not all times the consumer are the infrastructure guys. And a good suggestion to ask that kind of question to that kind of producer, we can say, the infrastructure guys, to understand how guys they see the platform engineering initiative and platform as a product in their daily job.
Right, that's the goal. I think you nailed it.
You're welcome.
The link is in the chat and in the notes now if you want to sign up for interviewing.
Robert.
Yes. So I don't really have a feedback type thing, but did you mention when there could be potentially a sign-up form for not interviewers but interviewees?
We should probably have a version of it tomorrow.
Okay.
We have a form. So we have a form that we've already used as part of KubeCon, and we had about 30 or so signups, and about more than half of those people I found out are on Slack. So I'm pegged to make a blog post that we'd be able to put up, kind of advertising the effort, and then we could put it in social media or wherever else we want to go to collect.
Yeah. The reason why I'm asking is I'm doing a lot of presentations on the things that we're doing here, and I at the moment have an empty slide saying platform as a product research. I need something to put in there. So it would be great to be able to send people somewhere to sign up and help.
Where are these? Just out of curiosity, where are these presentations going? Like, who is it for?
For multiple conferences and
okay.
And just real quick before jump to Bruno, Robert, who's the, I mean, we talked about it a few times, but it got buried. Who's the right person to give us access to the end user group?
Oh, good question. I can figure that out. So you mean by getting access to the end user group, you mean getting insight into the
Being able to kind of promote the work to them to get them to sign up to be interviewees.
I guess the end user group is a Tyler thing. He made it, so I can just ask him, I think,
Okay.
and we'll figure something out. I'll write that down.
Because we're going to have some people who want to participate in interviewing, but maybe not necessarily have anybody in mind in their network. So,
right. I'll write that down and I'll reach out to Tyler and see if we can figure something out.
perfect.
Yeah, and
If you
Robert,
need me, I can relay on the end user Slack because I have access. I'm an end user myself. So on the Slack, I can at least, but Taylor can do a newsletter about it.
Yeah, I thought it would be a good thing to go through him so we don't kind of just like put ourselves in a position where we just spam stuff out to the end user like willy-nilly, even though I think this is perfectly fine. But you know, just to be very yeah.
Perfect. Bruno?
Yeah, there's something that maybe can help a bit because in our company, we are trying to improve the state of the platform that we have. And one of the things that is based on the articles you guys wrote that we have been trying to do is I spent a lot of energy convincing my developers that we need to understand better our use cases. The guys that are the platform engineers, like, do you really understand the problems you're solving? You're talking to the developers, your internal users. There was a lot of effort to map those use cases internally in our company and exercise this to talk about developers. So it's not an interviewing format, but we went through the process of talking with our developers to build more solid use cases. So maybe some of that information can help you here because it seems like there is a lot of intersection, right?
yeah, I think there might be some overlap too in Abby's post that we'll talk about in a minute. Her request on GitHub for community contribution around the product thinking, because that's definitely one, like, how do you work with the developers to understand what this initiative is for? How do you help them dissect what capabilities they need? Sometimes it's hard for them to ask and be able to communicate what they need and things there. I think, Bruno, you might be able to really help there and might be an easy way to dig into contributing something as well.
Dominic?
My question, is there just a reminder for folks that might be interested, is there a central place to go to get information about the platform as product research stuff? Where do we need to, like, is there a doc that's still maintained? There's a bunch of noise, so I'm not sure which document. There's one or
noise. I think the best place is probably the I'll post it out after the epic we have for the work and the associated tickets. And we have a folder in let's see, where is it? Bum, bum, bum. So this is
project.
yeah, so this is probably the best place to get kind of an overview of all the component parts, although it is a little out of date. And then in terms of the script, let's see, where's it? This is where everything is going to land, from the script to the blurb to the best practices interview guide. And then we're going to stand up a Slack group for interviewers, in part to coordinate, and then in part to obviously share experiences around each interview we run in terms of issues with duration or question quality or anything around kind of like the hygiene of the interviews themselves, so we can have a tighter feedback loop around the process.
I just put the link of the epic into the chat.
Paste that into the
Zoom Meet chat.
Got it. All right, perfect. Cool. Does anyone? Dom, it looks like you got something.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the target audience for this research is also, like, because the question came now up, it's like looking at successful organizations that already now are more in level 3 and 4 of our maturity model. So we want to learn what's worked in successful companies. That's why you also bring up as a, I guess, next topic we are also working on some blog posts to just do product thinking introduction in the space or context of platform engineering, to address the level 1 and 2 organizations. But this interview really looks, or this research really looks at what worked in successful platform teams already. So keep that in mind when interviewing, or also getting your data in for being an interviewee. It's more about like what worked than about what is planned or anything in that direction. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
That
I
sounds
would.
great.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, part of it is we're probably going to get a breadth of things just because we're looking at current state. So I think it's going to be a decent kind of distribution of practice maturity across companies. We want to see what it's like at organizations that are really thinking at those like scaled and operational levels for the platform. But I suspect we're probably going to have kind of a bell curve of maturity.
Yeah, personally, I still would like to also see interviews for people that are not mature to get an understanding of how they perceive the platform, so that we can build better language to help introduce new companies to the concepts as well. I think that'll be a valuable thing.
Yeah,
So
we're not focused. The interview language doesn't include product in it, and I'll make it clear in the blog post that or I'll try and figure out a way to say, you don't have to consider yourself a high performance product oriented team to participate in this.
Yeah, I mean I think that's a good call out. We're not asking people if they think they build platforms well and if they engage in product thinking, right? We're capturing current state, right? How they do things. And then the synthesis part on our end, when we get into that stage, will be to see how well they match what we think of as, kind of industry best practices. I don't know who went first. Marsh, let's say.
Sure, thanks. It's been since we published the maturity model last fall, I've been thinking about what did we miss, right? And one of the things we missed was, to some degree, is covering the size of the organization, because the platform needs are going to change depending on how big you are. A platform is a response to scale, and so I think one of the interesting aspects of the recruiting is that for smaller companies, their platform needs are going to be they don't in addition, so everyone has their own maturity and what's right for them and where they are on their journey, but also the size of the company as it changes is another dimension to the problem, and I'm not sure how we use that in the qualification piece. I can think of several organizations that are arguably doing sort of like prototypical platform engineering now, but they're small enough that is the right maturity level. So I don't know if that's germane to the research that
It
you're
is,
talking about
because
here.
we are asking questions up front about the size and nature of the organization, and this would come out in the analysis.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Sorry, my point was that people might disqualify themselves because they don't see the need for having platform engineering. So I'm just curious, like, are we looking to, as part of the qualification process for companies we talk to, are we using the size of the organization as
No, we're not
input to that?
qualified. If people sign up
Okay.
to be interviewed, we'll want to talk to them, right? And it's just, again, that kind of advertisement for it. I recently wrote a blog post about how the platform thinking scales up and down, right? And I kind of got I rethought that recently, and I used to think, as you did, maybe that scale requires platforms and that doesn't work at the small level, but the some of the stuff that we ask is actually still relevant.
Cool, thanks.
Brian, and then let's move on.
All right.
Thanks. I was just going to ask, I'm very late to the party, but I put some suggestions in the issue around the questions. Are you still looking for submissions on that, or is time passed? I'm very aware you've got a lot in there already, so the interview is going to be probably too long. Is it still something you want help with, or are you looking to kind of close that down and move on with the interview process?
Yeah, we've considered it closed down, but if you have suggestions, like add them to the ticket, to the issue, and then maybe it could be an issue for like refining something or displacing something if it's if we all decide that it's a more useful question to understand current state. But we're pretty much at a point where this version of it is pretty close to lockdown, if not lockdown, so that interviews can kind of kick off and we can standardize that process so questions don't change from interview to interview. The idea here is that, yeah, the idea here is that we're also going to come back to it, right? It's not the idea isn't that it's a one-off project, right? We'll come back and we'll get a sense of how the community matures, and we'll probably have better or different questions that we want to ask as we understand more.
Awesome, thanks.
Michael, can you release the screen share? I wish I had permissions to steal it, but I don't. Let's see. Oh, I can't even. Do you have permissions on the meeting? It looks like I can't share my screen. Oh yeah, there it is. Got it.
You should have, but that is a thing we need to bring up because there's some host key things and et cetera, et cetera. All the boring parts of hosting these meetings, all the admin stuff.
I'm struggling with Zoom's user experience.
But that's not our fault.
Yeah, I know.
That's someone
That's
else's.
not a criticism for the Zoom people watching. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. So just going back to our agenda, we've got about 20 minutes left. So I wanted to give some time to talk about some of the things. So we have really 3 active topics. If I've missed one, please yell at me or add it here, but 3 active topics in the community posts. The goal for the community posts and some of these discussions is obviously we want to generate new content and update existing assets like the maturity model, the white paper, and we'll get more intentional about thinking about what does a next revision look like and what are our goals. But one of the ways that we want to dig into that is through some of the blog posts. So we want to leverage community contribution in the blog post as a way to test ideas and drive and assess some of those ideas to see if there are things that need to be unpacked further, if there's interest. Think of it as a little bit of lead generation, I suppose. But if you have a topic that's not here, please feel free to create an issue for it. The goal on the contribution framework is create an issue, see if there's interest. We as the working group will find somebody to be a sponsor to support the development of that material and give you some support and criticism and guidance as we go to make sure things are all vendor neutral and all the things that the CNCF requires as well. But please feel free to add something there. Again, it will go create a proposal. We'll assign and find a sponsor, then work towards the initial draft and revision, and then we'll publish that on the blog, or maybe it can be co-publishing. Not sure about the co-publishing yet. And then after that, if it's something to dig into more deeply, then we'll look at including that material more formally into the maturity model, into the white paper, or into its own paper efforts right now, or in the future, like what the platform as product has kind of evolved into, right? So I wanted to touch through a couple of these topics and surface them for people. My goal today is to help find contributors for the topics and just help people find the issues and add themselves to it, start creating conversation, creating your thoughts. And behind the scenes, my goal will be to assign some next steps and some dates and some accountability to these items so that we can move them forward. And mine is probably the oldest in here, and so that's why I need the accountability as well. But let's go ahead and jump into those. Again, feel free to add something to this if I've missed your issue. A lot of these, in my opinion, are crossing over with the discussion that we're actually having. I think, Marsh, you may have added on this one. Yes, as well. So we're gonna end. The third one is going to be around the discussion for the diagrams, which I think ties this together really well, and that's kind of why I put it in this order. The first topic, and we won't be able to discuss these at super length, is kind of my idea or some of the things that I've experienced with paying for platforms of platforms and how to communicate the existence of multiple platforms or interactions of platforms, especially when we're implementing commercial off the shelf or open source tools that they themselves promote as platforms as part of my platform. and what that looks like. So if you read the description, I'd say that applications and platforms and application platforms and the many variations create confusion in developer experience and managed cloud environments, as well as development of platform maturity. What I've found is I've needed to provide better visualizations, or I need better visualizations and tools to help define if somebody who is adopting my software, or if I'm adopting somebody else's software, to understand the components and parts required to operate that software on my platform or as a part of my platform. It gets really confusing, and that's why it's tough to describe a little bit. Really, it boils down for me that in the cloud native world, we're deploying applications and capabilities and services that are sharing resources with each other. And maybe my favorite example would be, how do I reuse an existing Prometheus, right? And I'm not sure that there's a good way to define that. So I'd like to spend some time in general, not on this call, digging into what do those patterns look like, and how do we communicate those patterns, and how do we make our platforms and our applications that might not be platforms, or our applications that are platforms, more adoptable. So if anyone is interested in that, definitely please share on the GitHub issue, or you can let me know in chat or something there. Again, prefer this would be a blog post first, to help display some visualization, to help create some conversation, and surface some things. And ideally, we'll get some derivative papers or topics out of that as well.
I, in general, like the idea of defining some patterns. Personally, that works pretty well for me when it comes to complex topics, to learn how to do stuff, and anything that we can do that kind of starts building up some sort of, not library, but getting some patterns out there to describe these things. That's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I think you can spend 30 seconds probably showing one example. Of course, I'm signed out of everything all of a sudden. Let's see.
It doesn't necessarily need to be like the most like complex thing. It could be basically like you're showing off now, something very visualized, gets down to the we don't have to define like 6,000 different patterns, but we get the ball rolling and getting some stuff out there that will be helpful. That is kind of the idea of the working group, producing helpful stuff.
One of the challenges that I had with an implementation of it was a data platform, or something that called itself a data platform, was the ability to understand what we actually needed to provide from the infrastructure side to help this platform operate. And I ended up using the CNCF or the platform's working group white paper diagram as is to help communicate that. I could have gone more complex with it and included some particular areas for data platform or some other things, but this was just one method I tried to do at a high level, where initially the requirements didn't define in context what I needed to bring from a messaging standpoint, what I needed to bring, or if something was provided from an artifact scanning or policy standpoint, an observability standpoint. Like, what are the different components of this thing that you're calling a platform if I want to adopt and operate that? And I need to be a provider for what you are saying is an open source platform that, I can ship on my own or self-manage. And so I tried to classify the components that I found, and then add some areas that say, bring your own, bring your own, bring your own. And just being intentional about saying, bring your own here, was a big leap forward in understanding how I needed to actually deploy and operate this thing, or what those requirements were. You'd think that would come forward in software requirements or installation requirements, and I find it rarely is for things that call themselves platforms, right? And what we kind of did, on the other hand, was we added and layered a bunch of extra stuff in, and we're just trying to find a way to also show that we're enabling personas. So maybe we have some target personas that aren't currently enabled out of the box with this kind of baseline platform that we're deploying, and we need to enable and operationalize like DevOps teams, platform teams, whatever. And we had to layer in some extra tools and some other things along the way to make that happen. This is not an end state perfect example, anything there. It's just an example of trying to find a way to communicate things like that. Marsh?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hinted at this, but this, there is another issue being tracked that talks about visualizing an update to the graphic that you reference here in yours, Colin. And these things seem to fit together nicely. I mean, I have a bunch of questions about this that are probably like, this is the wrong forum to have them in. I think a smaller breakout group might be good. I would love to talk about it. Some of those things I think, though, we'll need to clarify are, when you mentioned cloud native platforms, are we only focused on CNCF universe, for instance? No, I didn't think so. And then, like, where do we draw the line? Where does this end? Is this really, are we really just talking about the software development lifecycle and how we support those journeys at large? I think we might. There are platforms like HR platforms that are clearly out of scope, I think, for what we're talking about. There are things like design systems that might be in scope. And so to me, I think this is really what are the ways in which you can support repeatable developer journeys in organizations? And maybe we call that platform or platforms. Maybe when we say platform, we're really just saying something that is productized, that is extensible and developer oriented. But I think like coming up with some clarity on how we frame this is going to be one of the challenges. I'd love to help with that if I can.
Yeah, and I'd encourage folks, if you haven't seen it already, there's some really useful language and platform thinking in the newly published AI working group white paper from the CNCF side. Take a look at that as well. I actually thought that they did a really great job communicating the operational components and capabilities needed to operationalize machine learning. So all the tools and things underneath the hood that it seems nobody is talking about. I'm not sure why they're not talking about how to actually operationalize machine learning, but there's some really good language in there that we can learn from as well. But just another example of that, because in a business with an operational AI platform, very much, in my opinion, are approaching the same concept of platforms, and they may not have software developers doing some things. It may be that the researchers are actually the developers at that point. So there's some interesting parallels that I think can be drawn there and learned from. The next blog topic here, I think, digs into the product thinking. I wish Abby was here to be able to talk about this a little more. Robert, maybe do you have a little?
No, she put that in by proxy for us. So I think Dominic brought it up earlier, and Dominic, if you want to talk.
Sure. So I already put a comment down below as well. What's the immediate to do in this ticket? So in general, the idea was that coming from our platform coffee and KubeCon, we identified that we have a lot of assumptions on the level of product thinking that people already have, and that they are fluent in all of the stuff that we are talking about when bringing up product as a platform as a product. So we wanted to take one step back and really do some basic introductory topics, just as we talked about earlier here, in why you might get some value from doing product management in the space of platform engineering. And we already tried it out in one blog post that will definitely go into a PR this week. We're just in the finishing touches of the first draft, and then we can refine it a bit more, get some feedback on it in the pull request, where we talk about why it's important to talk to your customers and value for your customers as base of product thinking, and what benefits it has with like producing less waste and all of that. And the idea was that this is a very good starting point, because while we wrote it, we were like thinking about so many things that we could put into it, but then it blows up and just becomes like the mother of all blog posts on product thinking. So it's rather better to keep the first one really simple and then do a deep dive in different topics along the way, like what we already, identified as potential follow-up blog posts, doing a better deep dive on on customers and how to identify customers, users, and their needs and all of that, like interview formats and stuff like that, how to interact with them better. One could be metrics and stuff like that. We deliberately put no details on how you can do things within product thinking into the first blog post, and put rather stuff around what's the basic idea and the mindset behind product thinking in the first one, and then we can continue with follow-up blog posts. And this is the ticket around it, where we can brainstorm on any deep dives, any follow-ups, and where we'll also link the pull request for the initial blog post. That promises, I promise, comes up this week. Yeah.
Good. And then we got one more, which is going to be a popular topic. So I wanted to surface that up. I'm excited about this blog post or about this GitHub issue. I think it's really important. One thing I would say is a way to kind of steer the conversation. This is a great example of one platform, like of one advanced implementation of a platform that has a lot of great things in it, but not everyone will need all of the things as a part of their platform. But I think these visualizations are probably better than I've seen in many other places. And so, maybe you want to talk about those really quick.
Yeah. Thank you. I will start from the outcome. Why a company should adopt a platform, an internal developer platform? And my idea is that if you just think about the platform as an IT initiative, IT for IT, it may be in the future that will be not available for the business. And if you start in another way, if you open this part. If you start to provide an outcome and slide from 5 to 10 is my preferred one. I know that there are several different ways to see, but it is the idea. You can, if you highlighted it with a team topology, product teams that are building application for business, and platform teams that are providing a product, internal product, to simplify the creation of application for business. And the infrastructure, complex system, external SaaS like Salesforce, Dynamics, all the cloud services are something that you can pick and provide in a self-service way to your product teams. That way you can provide a slice for end-to-end approach for creating a platform internally to a company. That a platform is not just an internal platform for infrastructure DevOps, but is a tool that every time a new element in production is implemented to solve a problem for the end user, for the customer of the company, you add more information, more data, more capabilities inside your platform. You can reuse more and more time the same data, the same capabilities, and you can launch an inner source approach. You can launch a internal marketplace to share capabilities. And a resource can be an infrastructure, can be a DevOps tool chain, can be a data product, can be an API product, an AI gateway, can be whatever. The platform is something that helps you to monetize your sleeping assets inside the company in some way. Now, the idea is that from one side, you have people that are creating resources, infrastructure, DevOps pipelines, source code, templates, whatever. People that are using that components to build a fast application for the market, and the people in the middle that are organizing, and we can curate data resources for leveraging data resources for people that are creating applications. And it's like the two-side platform, like Airbnb, like Uber, instead of having people that are sharing their car, are people that are sharing their data, they're sharing their infrastructure, they're sharing their pipelines, and people that are consuming and improving the platform because they are using more and more time the platform. And in my opinion, platform engineering at the moment is just the part of infrastructure and DevOps. That's it. Is not highlighted, maybe is under the hood, but it's not highlighted the benefit for the business. I don't know. This is the starting point why I opened this issue, and we need more time to discuss this part. I hope that is interesting also for you.
Yeah, one area that I really liked is that you included the personas, right? They're kind of, they're tough to read because some of the things are in here sideways. I know we'll figure that out. But I think that's an area that we often miss when we're doing topologies and the other diagramming. It's really helpful to show who's going to use what. And that was one of the ways that I've done that, is kind of overlay lines to say, hey, in this portal, you're accessing these things from this user and doing some things there. But I really like your approach here. When we were chatting in Slack, and I honestly, I really like the way that you laid this out in slides 3 and 4 as well, showing kind of the product landscape, because some people think in that context, and that's, I think, how the initial diagram was more geared. So I feel like this is an evolution of that more specifically. Not to say that there's going to be one diagram to rule them all. And then in this final diagram, to me, does a good job of showing some different platforms almost. I know you've got Marketplace here, which I don't know if I'd consider that a platform. It seems like it's part of the platforms, but one area that I see a lot is how do I enable the data teams? And the data teams may have different CI/CD processes and different portals and different things. And I may have more than one, especially at larger organizations, we see there are multiple internal developer platforms. There's not one to rule them all. So just showing how we can communicate multiple, or like there can be variations and stuff like that, is an area that I've been interested in seeing. But it's like, how do you do that without growing without keeping the diagram simple, without like throwing a bunch of stuff in there?
So that's one of the things that in itself, I like the idea of adding more context into the diagrams. But at the same time, the original one, the thing that I like about it is that it boils down to very specific concepts. And that is part of the things that I talk a lot about when I talk about platform engineering, not to necessarily focus on the very specifics, but into the set of capabilities and so on and so forth. I would like to see to add something like this to what's already there, not necessarily remove kind of the original way it is set up, because like I said, just the idea of having not necessarily its specific implementations of stuff, but capabilities, how do you interface with it, and so on and so forth. Having that as like the high level way of thinking about platforms, and then maybe deep dive into more specifics with something like this, best of both worlds. Because if I had no idea about platforms and you threw this in my face, I would start looking at all this and go like, okay, and then my brain would not allow me to process this. So having something that is kind of more digestible as kind of like an intro, does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. My idea is that maybe in the first diagram, you should add a way to publish assets, manage the resources inside the platform. I think that is missing a layer. I named it Marketplace composable layer. I don't know, but the idea is that you can provide something that starts from scratch. You create your assets, and then that assets can be reused more and more time from other teams. And it's not just a catalog of not curated assets, but is someone that is curating that assets and say, okay, this is an asset that can I share with other teams. Can be an API gateway, can be a payment gateway, can be because this picture is a lot of infrastructure orchestration.
Yeah.
It's missing the application assets, because at the end you work with data product, you work with events products, you work with API products.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. But that also comes back to the point that I was making, where capabilities is something that's not a specific thing. It could be a very technical infrastructure part. It could be a supporting function. It could be, because again, capability is a more open term. But maybe we need to define what kind of capabilities one can have and start moving along those lines, so we can have a said this is a typical, some sort of platform, and they have these types of capabilities, and this capability is of this type, etc. We can start making a little bit more visual and a little bit more composable for these various things. And that can also tie into the patterns idea of being able to reference certain types of platforms and so on and so forth. But I think this is a good idea, and I think this is a thing we need to discuss more when we have time.
No.
Yeah, I'm definitely down to discuss more and weigh in. Cool. Well, for the sake of time, I think we got to cut us off. Some of us have to run to meetings. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. Please go find those issues and raise your hand to contribute in those. I'm going to weigh in a little bit for Dominic and some of the things that he said that I'm interested in. But I hope everyone has a good week and get into the Slack. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, y'all.
Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, so. Bye-bye.